Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. If you are aware, our guest today is, my name is Jack Holder. I am the editor for the Great Commandment Comics Anthology, live on Kickstarter right now. And joining me today from Helsinki is Joni Hägg. And I'm almost positive I have screwed up that last name.
Yeah, it's Hagg. It's like an egg with an H.
Hey, yeah. Thank you. I will endeavor to make sure I don't screw that up. Joni is joining us today to talk about his contribution alongside Kyle Irvine for the Great Commandment Comics Anthology. His comic is entitled Help, featuring a lord, a butler, and the Great War. We'll be talking about what this comic is like, the Great Commandment, what you can do, and how to take over the world. All sorts of wonderful things. So please, if you like this, like it on Facebook, comment below. We are going to try and answer as many questions as we possibly can. Tell everyone about this, and let's just have a grand old time. So the first question that we absolutely, positively always have is, what is the Great Commandment? What is this comics anthology? What is Kickstarter? And who are you guys? So every single moment of every day, we have certain commands that infest all of our lives. From the high and eloquent religious and political of you must love your neighbor as yourself, we the people in order to form a more perfect union, to the more commonplace and very often heard of, all right, we need to actually go out and do the groceries today. Let's make sure we actually get everything done correctly. Yes, you do need to get up in the morning and make breakfast. It's your turn. To the very lowbrow and very much beloved fictional ones of live long and prosper and be excellent to each other. But just as much as those commands are important, so too is our response of, yes, but what does that actually all mean? What does it mean to love one another as yourself? What does it mean to prosper, to be excellent? And that is what the Great Commandment is about. It is a comics anthology with over 24 tales, answering the very question of what commands mean, what could they mean, and what should they mean. We have stories like samurai Akitas defending their homes from ninja cats while quoting Sun Tzu. We have young men going to the very halls of Valhalla to find out what being worthy is all about. We are extending from the atrocities at the southern U.S. border all the way to a lord's estate after the Great War. And speaking of that one, we actually have the writer here today. His name is Joni Hägg. Making sure I get that right this time. And we are just so honored to have you here today, Joni. Can you tell people a little bit about yourself and your own work before we dive into Help?
Yeah, sure. Right. So I'm Joni. I'm from Finland. I have a master's degree in theology, actually, which is really funny since Jack has one as well. So
yes,
I have one from University of Helsinki. I studied biblical exegesis, so the study of the Bible and the cultures that spawned the book, created the book. I focused on New Testament studies, and I did specifically my thesis on the cognitive science of religion and ritual studies, so how the human brain and the human psychology relates to religious experience or religious rituals, and how that might have, shaped the beginnings of Christianity, the early Christianity. So that obviously has nothing to do with what I actually wrote today for this book. Oddly enough, I considered for a long time, should I write something religious, something about religion or something, a passage from the Bible or maybe Quran? And I realized, okay, I could find something that I like about this, but could I find something that a common reader who isn't as well versed in the theological aspects as I am, would they understand what I'm trying to say, or would it actually be interesting in any way? So that's why I went in a different direction and looked for some other elements that we'll talk about sooner. Apart from theology, I used to be an English major, and it's part of the reason I write in English. I find the English language very intuitive for myself. I've been reading in English since I was like 13, so exclusively in English almost. So, and I've been writing comics for a few years now, trying to find my way, find what I like, doing it as a hobby. But for the past year, I've had more and more time to write, so I've been doing it more, and I've really enjoyed it. And I'm hoping that at some point I'll be doing creative writing for a living, whether it's through comics or game writing or any sort of other writing. I'm hoping to turn that into something. Even though I have my degree in theology, which actually allows me to be a priest in the Evangelical Lutheran Church of Finland, if I was to be ordained, which hasn't happened yet, but it might happen in the next few years. So I have a very varied past, let's just say.
English major with a master's in theology. Yeah, I know a lot about that personally. And thank you so very much for bringing your talents to the Great Commandment. So I would challenge you a little bit on saying that you didn't bring your theology into help, because reading this, you're really delving into personal, heartfelt commands when it comes to help. So I don't want to give too many spoilers, because people definitely should be getting this book to read it. But can you talk a little bit about help?
Yeah, so the way back when you put out the open call for the anthology, like I said, I was thinking about what should I like, what command should I do? Well, then eventually it came to me, okay, I really like this idea that there's this sort of duality when someone asks you to help them. It's a plea in one way, but there's the social construct, this moral code that you're sort of obliged to help someone, and it becomes a command in itself. But I want to find a social situation where this help me would become an actual command. And from there, I kind of landed on this Lord and Butler relationship, which is at the heart of the story, that is obviously called help. And from there, I had to kind of dig through, okay, if I want to tell a story about a butler, right? Okay, I love British stories, British literature, British TV shows, and Butler is always there. Okay, so it's going to be in Britain, probably. But are there butlers in modern day Britain where it makes sense to tell a story like this? Probably not. So I had to date this. I went almost 100 years back. So after the First World War, that's still a situation where I think it feels natural for there to be a lord and a butler, and for them to have a personal relationship that's not just servitude in itself, although that also plays a part in the story, that there's a certain amount of expectation from someone when there's a power dynamic, and you're helping someone in that system.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that kind of brought us to where I started with the story. So then I was working on, okay, who are the characters and why are they helping each other, and is there a mutual benefit, or is it just one way, or is it two way, and what's the history between them? Why are they helping? And, all that is more or less in the story. I think if I wrote it today, I'd probably tweak some things, but honestly, I'm really happy with how it turned out.
As am I. What we're not seeing too often nowadays is absolute servitude roles, like roles where you can fully advance and get to the highest level of your field, and it is by nature a subservient role. People get into assistance jobs with the expectation of growing beyond that. But being a butler, very much like being, in some aspects, a priest or more specifically a monk. You're specifically saying a role of servitude. And you were able to do this with a really great artist in Kyle Irvine. Kyle, unfortunately, is unable to be with us today, but looking at the artwork, it's just a phenomenal thing. Can you talk about the creative process?
Yeah, so this is the first time I've worked with Kyle, but we've since on worked on Under the Story, on an anthology that actually just came out. I'll talk about it later a bit, but what I love about Kyle is that he takes these my ideas, like most of the panels I've wrote in, like the pages look more or less as I imagined them, but Kyle found ways to do storytelling through layouts and panel placements and adding close-ups, here and there that really enhance the storytelling. And I think couldn't have really asked for a better partner here. And I'm really lucky to have found him, because his way of telling, especially in the war flashback sequence, I think I wrote it very densely because I wanted some, this feeling that war is really unrelentless. You can't really escape from it, and you can't really get the full picture during the war. Like, so we're in the trenches, we're getting bombarded, there's panic, and there's this calming presence that comes in the story. This certain moment, there's a splash page. Actually, it's probably the best splash page I wrote, like on the text alone. It also has an additional element that there's actually text that I didn't write, because I'm quoting a poem by William Blake, and it's Kyle found a way to put those words, the poem itself, into the art in a way that I think really just encapsulates what I wanted. Because I basically gave him free hand. I said, I want this poem to be all over the place and dominate the scene, but you can come up with the way to capture them. Like, find a way that it works. And instead of doing caption boxes, he made these like fragments that you'll see on the page when you buy the book, and it's just, I don't know, somehow something about it just works really well. I don't think, like, if that page was done with a different artist and it was just normal lettering on a broken caption box for the poem, it wouldn't have the same resonance, I guess, like the same power, or punch. And these are things where I'm really happy when I'm letting the artist do some heavy lifting, even though I've written it down and came up with the idea, and I'm still have at it and make it better. Like, don't just reproduce something, make it look like something you've done. And Kyle is just an amazing storyteller. I don't know how he does it. Yeah.
What I see here and what I constantly hear from these solo writers, not writer artist, is very much that this is a relational sort of thing. And you can have comics that are very much just following instructions, like the writers are saying it and the artist is just doing what was said. But it's trying to strike that balance of giving your artist enough free reign to explore. And it's not so much not giving them enough that they'll do something that you're not expecting. Artists seem to really want at least some direction. They really want to have the opportunity to have some guidelines.
I've read a lot of scripts by other writers that are very scarce. Like, it's just sometimes in one word per panel, like on someone, and that's fine. If you have the relationship with an artist where it works, that's excellent, because the artist basically knows what you want anyway. But especially when you're working first time with someone, I found it, for myself at least, the best. I over-describe some things, but I say, okay, leave out things if you need to, find out a better way if you can. And with Kyle, for example, in this story, there were multiple pages where he came back to me while he was inking and saying, okay, I've added a few panels here that I think work better. We need some text here. Now we just need some balloons to kind of guide the eye here. And then we come up with, okay, we'll add some words here that, make sense for the story, that don't really change anything, but like he said, it's going to make the comic flow better. And that's, I think, part of the collaboration, that when you really need both guys or both persons to be really on their game and be willing to give something, just not just following rules, like you say. Like it's not a factory, it's a creative process. So, and for the writer, some writers I think are too protective. Like if they write something down, they want it done just that way. And I feel like that's, for prose or whatever, that's an excellent way to go about it, because you're in full control. But with comics, you're always kind of giving and learning and trying to find a balance where something you do works, but the artist drawing it needs to find a way that it works for them. Like they need to enjoy it as well. So
exactly, and that once again dives into the relational model. How was this? Because you and Kyle are not local artists with each other, and doing this sort of comic, it was a little bit different in this time and place. Like we were going through submissions, sending out acceptances, and then everything really started kicking into high gear just as the pandemic was really sweeping the globe. Can you talk about how it was creating this comic in that context, and how you and Kyle were able to work around that?
I think in this, it's actually lucky that it's part of my process when I'm pitching for an anthology. I usually write the script very early on, like at least a draft of it, to see if the story works on paper. Like I need to do my own personal layout, see how it works. Like even if I have the entire story mapped out in my head, I need to write it down. And that means that when we got accepted, we already had a working script that was mostly, the Kyle had seen it, he'd already thought about it. So he had all these ideas on how to actually go about it when we got the say so. And then I sent it to you and you said, okay, this is fine, let's do this. Which helps, because sometimes I've noticed that when you send an editor, on the first day after acceptance, you say, hey, here's the script, can you say if this works? And they're like, okay, we're gonna look at this 1 month from now. And that's, especially for Kyle, who's working a full-time job as well, and his art is very detailed, so he needs to take some extra time per page, especially since he did everything here. He did the line work, he inked it, he colored it, and he even lettered it. I've been learning lettering, so going forward I'll be able to letter some of my own stories at least, which will help with the workload. But here, I think probably it actually helped that this whole coronavirus situation happened in a way, because you're working more from home if possible. You have a certain, it actually cuts a lot of time, especially in big cities where you're not traveling. So
that has definitely been one of the big revelations during the pandemic, is how little many major industries and jobs need to actually be in an office.
Yeah.
Like friends and family that used to spend 4 hours a day having to travel, they're suddenly like, oh, I have all this time now, and what's going on? I'm like, well, you don't have to travel anymore. And the pandemic probably changed the world in that regard, where a lot of businesses are like, we don't need to pay for these massive buildings in major metropolitan areas, and we don't need to compensate our employees for parking and transportation.
Yeah, I think it's hopefully at least this remote working will stick around for a long time and become the new norm in a way. But I think there's loads of benefits to actually having people face to face. Obviously, it helps in many ways. That I think a Zoom meeting just doesn't quite cut it. But I think it's good that this is super weird to say that a pandemic is good, because it's really not. But it's forced the entire world to adapt at once. Like you can't kind of gradually do, or maybe do it later. You've done it now, and you know what it's like. So it's easier now to say you can do work 50% of the time from home or whatever. Like this is probably what we're going to see going forward. I mean, I'm obviously not working in an environment right now, at least where I'm not working full time because I graduated just before the coronavirus. So my job hunt has been a bit difficult, to say the least. There aren't any junior positions really opening up right now because companies are still figuring out if they can actually, pay people. But
that is true.
But I think once things stabilize in a few years, I think that's what's going to take for us to get back to any sort of normal in any way. I think it's going to change how people value things like personal interaction at the workplace, like how important it is to have those meetings and be able to go to the next desk over and say, "Hey, how's your day? Can I help?" or whatever. All this. I think it's really put a new perspective on this. And I've been hearing this a lot from friends who are working in office environments who, haven't been to the office in 6 months. They're saying that, okay, they like working from home, but there's something about working at the office that they're missing. Like there's just something, it's almost intangible. Like
the human connection.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's getting out of the house. One of the best things about this is spending more time with family. One of the worst things about it is not spending too much time with family, but feeling like the trap sensation, like you're confined. But it has also allowed people to read new things, catch up on new shows, and maybe check out a new book. Which brings us to what I like to call the QVC, or home shopping portion of this. This is actually our first interview where we have a 4 starting our campaign with $4,037 raised from 91 amazing backers. And the campaign is going on, and we are less than 10 days through. It's going to end next Thursday for people. And if you like doing what Joni and I are talking about, if you want to actually get the Great Commandment to read help, you can. We also have a deluxe version with added art content from artists from all over the world. We also have my very first anthology, Why Faith, which it very much feeds into our shared masters in theology. It's asking that question of why or why not have faith. Faith in what? And what does that do to your lives? We also have original art. We have Creators First, which allows you to check out the beginnings for series for a ton of creators. And if you back pretty much at any level, you're going to get a free PDF for my first book ever, dealing with the apocalypse. No, that is not about this year. I promise it is not about this year. It is a collection of fantasy short stories where an apocalypse happens, and it's more about the dealing than the apocalypse. So please go out. The link, once again, is right here. That is the sort of thing that we are about. Joni, what else do you have going on right now? You mentioned a couple of anthologies and working with Kyle again.
Yeah, so the biggest thing actually is I was a content editor, or am still, for an anthology called Inspiration. It's a comic school anthology. If you don't know, Comic School was a Twitter event that Gail Simone, a comics writer, ran way back when the quarantine or lockdown started in March, I guess. And a lot of people wrote their first comic scripts for that event on Twitter, and a community kind of sprang up from it naturally. And I was lucky enough to get together with a few other people, Owen and Mike, Madeline and Nathan, and we basically said, okay, let's make an anthology of these stories. Let's find artists who want to illustrate these. Let's pick some stories to do one book and maybe do second and third volumes later on. And our digital first book actually came out just on Saturday. Yeah, so on the 31st. It's on Halloween. It's on Gumroad. I can leave the link here. I think I can put it in the comments. I don't know how this works, but we'll see. It's 12 stories. 11 of them were written for the comic school event, and one of them is my story. I also lettered 2 other stories and helped edit all the others. I have to say, getting on this side of the editing system and putting together a book, it's super hectic. And we did it super fast, obviously, only 6 months from basically deciding to do it and releasing it. But we are doing digital only for now. We might do a print run eventually if we have the support and we feel like it's needed. But for now, I should also mention we are also doing it for charity. So all proceeds go to direct relief for this volume, which is really cool. I think it's just find the link somewhere easily.
So while Joni's looking for the link, what he's talking about with editing and actually working in anthologies is completely true. A 6-month from conception to putting it out there is a really short time. It doesn't seem like that, but you're talking about talent search, getting the multiple teams. 12 stories doesn't sound like a lot, but that can range from anywhere from 12 to even 40 people, depending on if you have multiple artists attached to a book, which is more than possible. The Great Commandment has over 50 creators attached to it because we get a little bit of everything. Joni, you put this in
I don't think
private chat. I will add it to the comments right here.
Yeah, I don't think I have that. No.
There we go. So
yeah, I think we have 36 creators on this book that we just did, and it's part of the best for me was getting to talk with other creators and see their process, being there instead of a server so we could actually see them. And, be there every step of the way. So we'd see them put in pencils, inks, and colors and letters, and we'd talk about at every stage of what can we do better, can we, how does this affect something else? And it's been really amazing to see, especially since we don't have a unifying theme. We're just kind of highlighting new creators. So seeing 30 people do comics differently, telling different stories. We have superhero stories. We have very personal stories about mental issues. We have fantasy stories. We almost have, I'm not sure if we have horror stories, but we have horror adjacent stories. And, it's all this sci-fi, real life, almost children's stories, or this, it's seeing all that come together. It's a very fulfilling feeling, even though, I'm only one small part of the team that put it together. Still been very fun experience. And I've learned a lot, and I hope the next books we do will be easier to do in that way. Less learning, at least.
Trust me, what you find out on your second anthology is not just what you can do better, but not just new ways to screw up, but new ways to create new challenges. First book was a wonderful challenge. The second one, we had a pandemic. And
so the third, maybe in the actual apocalypse, never know. But I think I don't, sadly, it's very expensive to buy books from indie creators here in Finland. Of course, the shipping usually costs more than the book. So I sadly don't have your first book, but maybe when I buy my copies of this book, I'll buy one.
You can get the digital one on Amazon as well.
I think I've actually read the digital book. I might own it. I'm not sure. It's possible I got it from one of the, because you've done a few, I think you've done some Kickstarter collaborations with others. Maybe where,
yep.
Or I got it from you. I'm not sure. I might have bought it myself. I think I've read it, but it's not because it's a very good book.
Why faith? Much like the Great Commandment, what you learn as an indie creator is what one of our contributors, Russell Nolte, keeps saying: you make it once, you sell it forever. So books end up just constantly coming back up. Dealing with the Apocalypse came out in 2017, and now people are going to be reading it for the very first time. Born of Magic was either last year or the year before, and then it was picked up for a couple of book groups. That's the sort of thing that you should come to expect as an indie creator. You're constantly making new stuff, and then people are hopefully discovering your old things.
Yeah, it's very much. Yeah, it's. I think this is something that many new creators, people who wanna get into this hobby or industry should learn, is that it's living. It's not about leaving a massive footprint at once. You're not making very few creators that that's going to be a bestseller. It's about leaving a lot of tiny footprints that people can pick up at any point. So I can at some in a few years I'll be able to say, hey, look, I've been in like 10 books. You can pick any of these up. You maybe see my name there, and that's super cool to me. Like even if the stories are only 1 page or 6 pages or whatever, they're not epics or long stories, but people are still discovering my work, one bit at a time.
Mm-hmm. So this anthology is about audience interpretation, taking external ideas, putting your own personal interpretation on them, and molding your life around it. Now we are going to set that message aside for a little bit because we have the writer right here. And sometimes you just need to take the opportunity to ask the creators, what do you want people to take from Help or from the Great Commandment or even from here?
I think it's well, for my story, it's easy. Helping someone, it shouldn't be a command. It should be maybe a call. Like in my story, it's a calling, and I think that's definitely something that I'm hoping that people will see. That it's, like I said earlier, that it's an internal, almost moral, command. Helping others shouldn't be a rule. Like it shouldn't be mandated. It should just be. You should just do it, and you should want to do it, and you shouldn't be ashamed of helping or asking for help. At least for myself, I grew up in a family and a place where helping each other was very normal, and it was but we weren't really good at asking for help. So it became this, I think many families know this, where you will help the other one unquestionably, like in any situation, but you almost need to know when to help because the other person isn't good at asking or isn't good at verbalizing, this is what I need. Could you help me right now? You should just kind of pick it up. And that's at least for people who struggle with social situations and maybe aren't best at reading people, this is something, especially online now, that we're losing this face-to-face connection where you can see each other's faces. Being able to kind of empathize with the other person and realize that they might be in a situation where they don't know how to say something or ask for help, but you might be able to do something little for them. Like it doesn't have to be a massive thing like in my story where someone devotes their entire life to helping someone. But I think that's more or less it. Like obviously there are some other cool things in the story that where we can have these life and death questions and moments that kind of shape you. Like you can obviously that's how life experience works. You have experiences and those experiences shape you. They make you a different person, sometimes a better person, sometimes not, but they're always going to be there. And at the end of my story, there's not really a twist. I didn't write a twist for this. It's more of a revelation, and it's about accepting sort of who you are or who you've become, and what your role in a relationship or a society or life. And I think that's a very good thing. I think a lot of people should be asking themselves the same question, like, who am I or what am I here for? Like, what do I want to do? And am I content with what I'm doing? Like, where am I in my life? Am I content in my job, my family, my relationship? Like, is this the role I want to play?
Precisely. I've talked about calling personally, and again, with two theology masters, we think about calling a lot more. So that is our interview today with Joni Hägg. What else have you got coming up really soon? Any final thoughts or things to talk?
Oh, I just want to thank you for this opportunity, because this is, I think, the first interview I've done about comics, at least in person, which is a really nice experience. It's nice to do it so casually, I guess, and kind of learn as we go, because this is always something that I'm hoping to do more in the future, and be more comfortable speaking to a camera, speaking to an audience at some point. Obviously, in my hopeful line of work, there'll be a lot of public speaking, but it's going to be a different kind of public speaking than this, talking about, a hobby or a passion like we have with comics. And we also have the, lovely, deeper philosophical questions here. But I don't know, it's been really fun. And one thing I want to say, I didn't realize the pun in the title of the Great Commandment until, I think it was during the summer. The first time I actually said the title aloud to myself in English. This is because I'm Finnish, so I don't speak English every day, and although I think in English sometimes, this was the first time I said it. And commandment, a commandment. Oh, right, yes, I should have seen this. And I just cracked up laughing in the middle of the street. It's like, oh my god, this is so clever. I need to tell Jack that I love this.
It was one of those where it hit me on driving on the way to work, so it didn't happen this last year, but that was the inspiration for it, and it did come from the religious iconography of Jesus's disciples asking Rabbi, what is the greatest commandment? And I'm like, well, what do commands mean? I'm like, oh, what did that command, what's it meant to people? And that just spawned so many wonderful philosophical comics. I love the fact that we're able to delve into this. I definitely want to echo you on not just calling, but this idea of help. Help is not something that we're supposed to question. It's not something that we as a society should be asking, why should I help? It's more, why shouldn't I? What is a good enough reason for me to say no? If you can't come up with a good reason as to no, just do it. Just help.
Yeah, that's thinking this day and age, it's more and more important, and it's one of the reasons I wanted to explore that through an extreme, because in storytelling you always want to push something to the edge, go as far as you can, and so I tried to find the ultimate helping or servient relationship, which was the butler, obviously, in this case. So I'm really happy with that a really simple idea can spawn something quite unique and complex, and I'm hoping that people reading the book will ask these questions, not just of my story, but all the other stories. What's behind this idea? So what? Not every story spells out the command or the idea quite as bluntly as I may, because I took a very not unsubtle, but very heavy-handed approach in a way. I wanted to spell it out in a way, but also leave room for the deeper explorations, But the stories I've read of the book, I've read through the book at least once fully and a few times through some of the stories that stuck with me, and I'm really happy with the way it works. You have some stories that are they spell it out, and some stories where you are thinking, okay, wait, what did this mean, and what's at the core? Your story in the book, I think, is just lovely. And the way it goes about it in this sci-fi setting, or near future kind of setting, and asks these questions that you might ask today in the current setting, in a very clever way, and kind of makes you think, and makes you question. Okay, hey, wait, why are we asking these questions, or why are these characters doing this? Like, and that's I think the best kind of storytelling, like where you enjoy the story once and then you think about it and then you realize something clever.
Thank you. And please check out the campaign, because we also have a free 6-comic preview that you can totally download and check out. You can check that out in Helsinki just as much as you can check it out in San Francisco. It lets you see 6 of the comics that are a part of this anthology. You can see that Joni and I are really just saying, we're not just blowing smoke. These are amazing stories that you definitely need to get, and you need to go out and get the book. So that is the end of today's interview. I will be with you tomorrow to talk with Greg Wright of Monstrous. We're going to be talking about his story, A Graceful Escape. We're going to be talking about working with small press publishers as well, and working in comics. He is several rungs up above both myself and Joni when it comes to the journey of working in comics. And we'll be able to have a wonderful time there. Thank you so much for being with us today, Joni.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you to everyone who has watched. I hope that you have a wonderful evening. If you are in Finland, I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day. If you're on this side of the Atlantic, thank you so much. Many blessings, and take care. And if you're an American, vote. Please vote. Please vote.